Good day and welcome to this presentation on gamification in education. My name is Koos and I'm a junior lecturer at the Department of Information Science, specifically for the multimedia degree. I'm going to explain what gamification is and then give an example of how gamification can be applied in education. First of all, before we can go into gamification in education, we need to understand the role of what gamification specifically is. There are various definitions for gamifications from different disciplines, specifically from business, psychology, and so on. My approach to gamification specifically is from a game studies perspective. The definition I'd like to explore is the definition, the use of game design elements in a non-game context. Now it sounds fairly simple, but it is a lot more complex, and it does require an understanding of game studies and game design theory for that definition to be fully implemented in gamifying a system. A breakdown of that definition is, first of all, the game part. Game in that definition refers to the structured, rule-bound experience rather than play, which is an unstructured, unobstructed, unconstrained experience. The second part is element. It is just an element of a game. It's not a fully fledged game. When a fully fledged game is used for education purposes or for other purposes than entertainment, we can look at serious games, digital games, non-digital games, and so on. But for gamification, it's specifically based on the elements of games. The third part is the design. When designing a gamified system, the designer focuses on the system and enhancing engagement and interaction in the system. It's specifically for the purpose of this design system, and it's borrowed from games. From a user's perspective, when they participate in a gamified system, they can experience it as a game. But originally, from the designer's perspective, it is for the purpose of the system and engagement in the system. And then lastly, a non-game context. Non-game context means absolutely anything except a game. Gamification is not a game. So any context, gamification can be applied except in a game itself. It is important to know that gamifying something can be fairly simple, especially based on that definition. But gamifying something extremely effective would be a lot more difficult because it requires an understanding of the game design theory. This section focuses on gamification versus game-based learning. We need to understand what gamification is not. Game-based learning is when games are used for teaching, such as serious games as previously mentioned, non-digital games such as board games, card games, Scrabble for spelling, mathematics games, and so on and so forth, and digital games, for example, edutainment and games of that nature. These are all for game proper. So game-based learning happens with games proper. Gamification is not a game. Gamification consists of elements borrowed from games, but they are definitely not games. Gamification can be experienced as a game. From a user participant's perspective, they can enjoy engaging in the system so much that they experience it as a game. But from the designer's perspective, gamification, a gamified system specifically, is designed from the system's perspective. It's not designed as a game. It's designed for engagement and interaction. So why do it? Why gamify? Games are extremely powerful. Games are capable of providing players with intrinsic motivation. In other words, they don't play the game because they are forced to play the game. They don't play the game because their parents tell them to play the game. They play the game because they like engaging with the game and they like participating in the game and the world the game creates. Games can teach. Games are designed in such a way that new complex systems are introduced to the player, and then these systems need to be taught to the player without the player feeling that they need to sit down and learn something now. So in that way, games are very, very capable of teaching players new skills. Games are engaging. A well-developed game can engage someone for hours without them knowing that they spent that time inside the game. And then lastly, games can modify behavior. Games use negative and positive reinforcement to reinforce certain behavior. If a game wants a player to do a specific thing, then they get rewarded for doing certain things. If a game does not want a player to do something, the player gets punished for doing these things. So games can get players to do specific things. First of all, games can get players to find, share, and filter through large amounts of information. Games allow players to make mistakes, learn, get access to the content, and then decide what content is important, what can be used and what should not be used. Games encourage exploration. They encourage players to explore the world, to collaborate with one another, and to exchange ideas, be it in a multiplayer world or a single player world. Games remove the pressure of performance, and in that way it doesn't interfere with the player's ability. If a player participates in a specific mechanic in the game and they lose or they die, then they can just try over again until they mastered this ability. And then finally, complex games such as massive multiplayer online games or games like Minecraft, for example, can motivate players to read outside of the game about the game specifically. So not just does the game provide information to the player, but the players search outside of the game for information that can help them within the game. And that way games are extremely powerful in terms of information as well. Now that we have a very basic understanding of gamification, we can start looking at gamification in education. So how do we gamify education? In gamifying education, there are 3 game elements that should be clear to students. First of all, the goal. The goal of the course should not be to achieve high marks or to pass everything, but it should be to understand the content of the course. Secondly, the obstacles. The obstacles is not the lecture or the tests. The obstacles is the understanding of the course content and the mastering of the course content. In that way, if the alignment can go from the lecture being the obstacle or the tests or the, things like that being the obstacle, rather than making the understanding of the content the obstacle, in that way gamification education can be extremely effective. And the third one is collaboration. The lecturer and the people facilitating the course should not be the enemy. They should not be the obstacle, as said before, but they should be the ones that the students collaborate with in overcoming the obstacles, understanding the course content, and achieving their goals, which is understanding the course content. A specific study found 4 concepts of game design that is extremely effective in gamifying education. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but it provides a very good example of how game design elements are taken and then placed into a gamified system. The first one is the freedom to fail. If the student is allowed to experiment and interact with the course content and in creative ways, they focus rather on mastering the content than overcoming these obstacles. It doesn't mean that the students should be provided with multiple chances to overcome or to pass a certain semester test. It means that the students should have the opportunity to participate in the system, and if they fail, then they should have another opportunity or a different opportunity to overcome these obstacles. Rapid feedback is the second concept. As the students interact with the content and as they participate in the system, they should immediately know if whatever they're trying to do is effective or not, if they're doing the right thing or not. And in that way, rapid feedback in a gamified system can provide the student with that information. Instead of the student having to ask the lecturer or a tutor to see if they're on the right path, the system provides them with feedback saying you're doing the right thing or you're not doing the right thing. The third one is progression. As the students progress towards mastering certain concepts, the system should provide them with a visual cue and a visual feedback to show that they are progressing towards their goal, that they are progressing towards understanding these specific concepts. By visualizing this progression, the students are capable of knowing how far they've come, and that's also very important. The fourth one is storytelling. Wrapping whatever the course content is in an engaging narrative will allow the students to more effectively recall certain concepts and in terms of memorization, some of the theory. When you place this into an engaging story that's not necessarily course related but completely fictional, for example, it'll allow the players and the students to recall and participate in the system more effectively, and it will also make it a lot more engaging. Now we get to the gamification education example. In the Department of Information Science, specifically for multimedia, in our one of our third-year modules, we developed a gamified system for a part of the module where the students are required to learn 3D modeling software. The students are required to learn how to use the software, follow along with certain assignments. We just familiarize them with the interface and the system itself, but they should follow along, they should do certain assignments on their own, and they should play with the system, with the 3D system at home as well, because in no way can we cover everything. So as a honors project, Mr. Peter Briggs developed a gamified system that hooked into the goals and the assignments and lectures of this module. The system contains points, badges and leaderboards, the PBLs of basic gamification, but also a social environment where the students are allowed to share information with one another, discuss problems, collaboratively solve certain problems, and also share their projects with one another. They're also encouraged to challenge one another in this social section as well. The students' participation in the system obviously provides them with marks, but it also provides them with rewards. These rewards come in the form of trophies and badges in the system, and some of these badges and trophies can be exchanged for real-world rewards, such as extensions on assignments or extra marks on certain assignments. This is an example of the points, badges and leaderboard section. At the top you will see there's a level progression badge or graph that shows the student how far they've progressed. On the left you'll see the leaderboard where they can compare their progression through the system with other students in the system. And then on the right bottom you see the trophies or the achievements, which is the badges part. These badges are unlocked as the students complete certain missions and certain activities within the system. And then some of these badges can be exchanged for rewards. This part shows the social system, which is a basic forum for the players to interact with and share this information with one another. They have free reign on this forum, and they also get rewarded by their fellow players with experience points for posting interesting and helpful information. This is the media library. Each participant in the system has a media library where they can upload videos, images of their work, of other work they found, of other tutorials they found online, or tutorials they made themselves, and share it with one another. This part also allows them to gain experience in the system and progress through the system. This window shows the missions, which is a list of missions, primary, secondary, follow-along missions, and extra missions. Some of the missions are linked directly to assignments in the class, and other missions are just for interest. Doing these missions again unlocks badges as well as progresses them through the system in terms of level gains. And then this final screen shows an overall visualization of participation in the system. This allows the players to see who has participated where and who did what. Thank you very much for attending this presentation. You're welcome to email me if you have any more questions, and thank you very much.